It's no secret that the Mariners are going to be looking for offensive upgrades at the trade deadline, specifically at first base. And friend of the show, Jage, at the Jage page on Twitter, came up with a pretty interesting trade idea that I think that we need to discuss because it's one that I probably would have never considered. And that is trading for Rhys Hoskins of the Milwaukee Brewers, who's having a bit of a career resurgence. Now, the trade and the pieces that you're sending in this trade are ones that kind of strike me as difficult for the Mariners to go out there and trade straight up, especially at this very moment, because of injury concerns with this team, because of future positional versatility, etc. But we're going to dive into all that, what Rhys Hoskins would bring to this team, and what you'd have to give up in this trade, and then whether or not I agree that this trade could actually get done. And keep in mind, it is the Astros series down in Houston right now. I am wearing my Heck the Astros t-shirt, and you could be too if you follow our fourth wall link in the description down below. Remember, always Heck the Astros. Now, before we dive into this trade from Jage, I think we need to discuss what Rhys Hoskins can do for this Mariners team. He's a first baseman. You've seen him in the playoffs a million times. He's a guy that you know that can produce. He came off a pretty bad injury a couple of years ago and signed with the Brewers in free agency. Let's take a look at his numbers so far this year. On the year so far, Hoskins is hitting 300, 402, 500 with a 902 OPS, good for a 151. OPS plus. He has 7 home runs, 27 RBI. He struck out 40 times and walked 25 times. So far, he's put together a 1.3 WAR year. Hoskins is actually striking out below league average, or right around league average, I guess, at 22.3%, about 0.2% lower than league average, but he walks nearly 6% higher than league average this year at 14%. He's also hitting the ball hard at 46.4% on the hard hit percentage, about 8% higher than the league average. You will notice here, however, that Rhys Hoskins is pulling the ball a lot at 42% compared to the league average of 29%. And when we look at his baseball savant, you can see that pretty clearly here, as most of his hits have come to left field or center field, not so much here to right field. Is that conducive at T-Mobile Park? Well, we'll discuss that here in a little bit if I think this trade actually makes sense, but his percentile rankings are great. He's 99th percentile in launch angle sweet spot. He's hitting the ball harder than pretty much anybody else in the league right now in the 99th percentile, his chase rate 93rd percentile, and his walk rate in the 90th percentile. Rhys Hoskins has been great. Now, he's not going to light it up for you defensively, but he's at first base. You don't necessarily need him to, and as of right now, the Mariners have Rowdy Tellez over there and Donovan Solano. Hoskins would be your everyday guy at first base. We'll talk a little bit more about how he would replace those guys in just a minute, but first let's look at his contract, because that's where things start to get a little muddy. In 2025, Hoskins is making $18 million, and he has a mutual option next year for $18 million with a $4 million buyout. So the rest of this year, the Mariners probably have to pay him, what, give or take like $14, $15 million if I'm doing my math right. And then next year, if the Mariners pick up that option and Hoskins agrees, then $18 million in 2026. I highly doubt, if he continues to play at the level that he's playing at currently, I highly doubt that Rhys Hoskins would agree to that mutual option. But that's just something that we'll have to keep an eye on here. Let's finally look at what Jage had to say about this trade. So Jage said, pending Milwaukee is in a seller mode at the deadline, how would this trade offer be received by both teams? The Brewers receive Luke Raley, and the Mariners receive Rhys Hoskins. He does add on here that, note, this is a pending a healthy or close to Victor Robles at the deadline. Assuming that Victor's going to take back over in right field, Luke Raley kind of becomes a man without a position again, depending on how the first base platoon's working out. When you look at the percentages here, you can see that Milwaukee says yes, Seattle says no, is the winner so far at 30.7% of the votes, of 537 votes, said that Milwaukee would say yes, but Seattle would say no. And when you look at the MLB standings, the Brewers are 24 and 26, 6 games back from the National League Central pennant, behind the Cubs, who are having a fantastic year so far. So it would make sense for the Brewers to probably be sellers at the deadline. That would require them to kind of fall off a little bit more. I think that if they're right around 500, they're not going to be sellers just because of the way the wild card works. But nonetheless, Luke Raley for Rhys Hoskins. Let's take a look at Luke Raley's numbers, and there's one thing about his contract that I think makes him really valuable for the Mariners. that we need to mention here. Luke this year obviously only played in 24 games. He was hitting 206, 345, 324, good for a 100 OPS plus, so this year's kind of hard to compare, but over the past 2 years, he's at a 125 and a 128 OPS plus. In Seattle last year, he hit 243, 320, 463, good for a 783 OPS. He hit 22 home runs for the Mariners with 58 RBI, 11 bags. He walked 27 times and struck out 135 times. Strikeouts have always been a problem for Luke Raley. His career strikeout rate is 30.5%, which is pretty high, but he was still good for the Mariners in 2024. His hard hit percentage is also usually above league average. This year it was at 49% before he went on the injured list, about 4% higher, about 10% higher than the major league average. We're going to look at Luke's 2024 percentile rankings just because they're really not qualified in 2025. His bat speed was in the 89th percentile, but you can see some of the blue on Luke's page. His walk percentage is pretty low. His K percentage is pretty low. His whiff percentage is bad. His squared up percentage is bad. Luke Raley, we know what we're going to get out of him. He's not going to always crush the ball out to right field. He's going to strike out a lot, but he's a guy that can play right field for you. He can play first base for you. And when you look at his spray chart, he does spray the ball around the field a little bit more so than somebody like Rhys Hoskins. He's also much faster than Rhys Hoskins. You can see his sprint speed is in the 90th percentile. Now here's where things get a little muddy because Luke Raley would actually be under control by the Seattle Mariners for another 3 years after this year. He is going into arbitration 1 in 2026. So he'll probably make a couple $1 million. And I think that that's where this trade kind of falls apart for me. Now, I think that Jage came up with a really creative and a really good trade here. I just don't think that Luke Raley specifically is the guy. And honestly, I think that's why so many people said that Milwaukee would say yes and Seattle would say no, because Seattle's going to value that contractual obligation that they would have to Luke Raley over the next 3 years. He will probably make over the next 3 years less money than, say, Rhys Hoskins is going to make next year at $18 million. And again, I think that Rhys Hoskins likely declines his mutual option if he continues playing this way. And Jage brought up an interesting point. He said, I do want to preface this. Who exactly is playing first base for the Mariners for the next few seasons? And no, I'm not accepting Tyler Locklear as a current option. Personally, I think there's a non-zero chance Rhys Hoskins is the Mariners' first baseman in 2026 regardless. So an interesting point there made by Jage is, who else is going to play first base for this team? If Tyler Locklear is not the guy, if the Mariners don't feel comfortable putting him out there at first base, who is going to be the Mariners' first baseman over the next couple of years? And he says that even if this trade doesn't happen, I think this is what he means by this, is that if this trade doesn't happen, there's still a chance that if he becomes a free agent this offseason, the Mariners could go out there and sign him anyway. So yeah, Rhys Hoskins does make a lot of sense. I think that the biggest part is where's Rowdy Tellez going to be, in a month or two's time? Is Donovan Solano still on this roster in a month or two's time? That's where things get a little messy as well, because Rowdy has an OPS plus of 103, give or take, whereas Donovan Solano has an OPS plus of 2. And he's really weighing down that platoon in terms of OPS plus over at first base this season. For me, I think that the Mariners would not want to do this trade simply because they want to keep Luke Raley on this roster. He's kind of been a spark plug for this team when he's been healthy, and he has that pull power that you kind of want in this lineup because his swing fits T-Mobile Park, where Rhys Hoskins can hit it out of the Grand Canyon if he wanted to. Does his swing necessarily fit T-Mobile Park, pulling everything to left field? I don't really think so. But again, he hits the ball so hard and so far, it probably doesn't matter where he's hitting. Jage mentions the Brewers don't sell, they reset. And he says, let me tell you, if Locklear had any sort of trade value right now, I'm fairly confident that trade would have happened by now. This was in response to Kevin over on Twitter saying, why not trade Locklear plus for Rhys? If the Brewers are selling, they would want younger players with more control, which is exactly why they would want somebody like Luke Raley. Raley has 3 more years of control. He's already proven to be a offensive force at the major league level. That's a guy they would probably like to add in this deal. Now, could you trade maybe some younger guys that are a little bit closer to the big leagues like Tyler Locklear, maybe like a Dominic Canzone? I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the Brewers would want in that situation. But overall, I think for this trade, I would like to see the Mariners hold on to Luke Raley because I don't know what you're going to get out of Victor Robles. Relying on Victor Robles to come back healthy and to come back and produce to the level that we think he can. Now, he's not going to produce like he did last year. That scares me. a little bit. And what are we going to see out of Leody Taveras over the next couple weeks? I think the hard part is that there's just so much up in the air with this team right now to where this trade doesn't make sense for me. Now, it could in a couple of months when we get to the trade deadline and things become a little bit more clear. Maybe first base has just become a black hole completely. Rowdy has really kind of stabilized that position so far. And so what do the Mariners do at the trade deadline? I think they do need to go out there and try to acquire Rhys Hoskins. I just don't know if Luke Raley's the guy. If they're willing to accept some younger guys closer to the big leagues like Locklear, like Dominic Canzone, maybe they're even willing to accept a pitcher in like Logan Evans or Emerson Hancock in that trade instead of like Locklear. I think the Mariners could get this trade done. If any team can get it done, it's the Mariners because of their farm system. But depending on where the Brewers are at in a month or two's time will really kind of change the way that I look at this trade. Let me know in the comments down below if you guys think the Mariners can make this trade. Don't forget to get your Heck the Astros merch while you still can. I appreciate you guys watching this one, and go Mariners.